Amy, you haven't tested me.
Oh, hello, Councillor Franks. We can hear and see you loud and clear.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair, the stream is live.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this night's session of Corporate Performance and Resources Committee. While everybody just settles down and relaxes, I'm going to just go through the usual announcements with everybody. So can I remind everybody present that this remote meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and then this recording will be archived for future viewing. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please use the remote raise hand function located in the bottom left-hand side of the screen. Please be patient and aware that there may be a slight time lag, and you do not need to press that button again. If having raised your hand via the remote function, you are not subsequently invited to speak, please turn your camera on or place a message in the chat function. When invited to speak, please could you ensure that your microphones and camera are switched on so that you can be both seen and heard. Once you've finished speaking, please remember to turn your activation button off so that you don't delay any other participants from coming onto the screen, and to avoid background noise when other participants are speaking. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function. That's for the sake of the recording. If any participants have difficulty being heard or hearing what's being said when they're addressing the committee, then please let me know, or one of the Democratic Services officers know as well. So if I can welcome committee members, non-committee members, officers, and any members of the public who are live streaming this meeting at home. So if we can move then to part one of our meeting, which is apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, for the benefit of the viewers, I'm Karen Bowen. I'm the Principal Democratic Services Officer supporting the meeting this evening. I have apologies from Councillor Hamilton. Just to let, I can see that Councillor Nicholas Wood has also got his hand up. If you'd like to come in to give any apologies as well, please.
Yeah, Councillor Robert Fisher, he's travelling. He's away.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Wood. Therefore, Chair, we are quorate and we can continue. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Karen. So if we move then to agenda item 2, these are the minutes of the meeting, 2 meetings actually, held on the 18th of December and the 15th of January of this year. Hopefully all members have had an opportunity to read through them. If members who were present at both meetings are happy to move, I would like to see a hand, please. I've still got now, Councillor Wood, are you moving the minutes or are you?
I can, yes. That was a legacy M, but I'm happy to move them. That's fine.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Hanks as well. That's
happy
great.
to second them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Right then, if we move on to agenda item 3 then, that's the declarations of interest and nature of such interest. Councillor Johnson.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to item 6, initial budget, I've got a right to speak on associated matters in relation to sports locations and community centres from the Standards Committee. So I'll wait to speak and vote on that. Thank you.
Thank you. No other declarations? Okay. If we move on to agenda item 4 then, that's a reference that has come from Cabinet on the 6th of February 2025. This is to do with the review of our pay policy 2025 to 2026. As we know, it's a statutory duty that we publish an annual pay policy. Has to be done by the 31st of March this year. I think before we start, do we need to notify officers to leave, or is that?
Yes, Chair. I was going to come in to let those who are viewing at home and online that the officers, chief officers who are present in the meeting will have to leave. The only officer that will remain will be Laith Bonny, who will be presenting the report that I'm being advised will be presenting. Laith will have to leave, however, when the decision of the committee is to be made. And then we will have to wait a couple of seconds for my colleague to email the officer to return so that we can carry on with the meeting. Okay, so if we could ask the officers to leave, except Laith. I'm not sure if Tracy's going to remain as well, but Tracy and Laith both work in HR may present tonight, but then they'd both have to leave before the decision.
Okay.
And then rejoin. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Karen. Okay, then. So over to Laith then to take us through the pay policy. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Committee. I think, as the Chair already mentioned, this is obviously an annual pay policy, which obviously I think, again, you're used to seeing this on an annual basis. It's already been to Cabinet, it now comes to scrutiny, and then it will be obviously for full sign-off at full council on the 10th of March. I think what I normally do with this report is it's fairly standard, I think, year on year, with a few tweaks and changes that happen throughout the year, just to keep it up to date and fresh as well. So I suppose just for sort of highlighting in terms of the report, in terms of the main Cabinet report itself, I think it's worth noting that you may have noted again in the report that the functions of the Independent Remuneration Panel for Wales, so the IRPW, also known as, that actually won't exist with effect from the 1st of April, and those functions have actually been moved into the new Democracy and Boundary Commission Cymru, say sort of function with effect from 1st of April 2025. No other changes from that respect, but I say that function is just moving across to a new function with effect from then. So again, just worth noting that. Nothing else, I do think, in the Cabinet report itself. Moving on to the pay policy itself. What we've got in here, just a few notes for information. Again, just in terms of changes, paragraph 4.4 in terms of the NJC pay negotiations, and again, we don't normally get advance notification of the new pay structure for 2025-26 prior to these reports being produced and published. I'm aware that the pay negotiations have commenced again between the employers and the trade unions, and again that will continue over the next probably few months. But again, whatever happens is that any pay that's been agreed will be backdated to the 1st of April 2025, and then obviously the usual process of providing that to staff across the organisation will happen. So again, that's that in terms of the pay negotiations. Reference again to 5.3 in the pay policy. We mentioned again previously, again at previous scrutiny meetings and pay policies, that we've got a number of benefits that we offer staff. One of the more recent ones that we introduced was the shared cost AVC scheme, where again staff within the local government pension scheme can buy additional pension through an AVC. Again, last year's report mentioned that because ultimately it's a salary sacrifice scheme, there was going to be a saving to employers' national insurance contributions because of the salary sacrifice nature of the scheme. The previous report we mentioned about a potential saving in employer NI costs of around 25,000 a year, and actually we've hit that, and there's a potential for further savings for next financial year of around 35,000 a year, national insurance savings for the employer. So again, it's a great scheme, again, not just for the employee in terms of saving additional pension, which is again really important, but again actually the council's making savings as well also as part of that, and it's something we're obviously constantly trying to promote an increased awareness around pensions in general. Another thing within the benefits scheme as well, that we've got the cycle to work scheme. And again, you'll be aware that we've had this for a while, and we used to open the scheme on a regular basis, almost open up mini windows throughout the year where people could buy bikes through, again, a salary sacrifice arrangement. And actually from November last year just gone, we've actually got the scheme open on a permanent basis, so staff don't have to wait for this window to open in order to purchase a bike through the scheme. So again, that's open on a permanent basis, and we feel that's a really good, again, benefit and scheme for staff to again purchase any bikes again through that scheme at any time throughout the year. Again, we got some updated figures around, again, the council in terms of the role of the chief exec, and just again updated figures around budgets, employees, and so on. So there's no major changes on that. And again, actually, if you look at paragraph 7.4, again, the council continues to pay the real living wage to staff, and again, the updated rates for those will be paid to staff with effect from 1st of April 2025, which means that our grades 1 and 2 will then be in receipt of the real living wage from that date. Again, that's something again that I'm aware that from the council perspective, we're all supportive of that, and obviously see that continue as well throughout the organisation. And I don't think, again, we've got some updates again in terms of salary scales, again, all based on April 2024 figures, just because pay awards nationally are still being discussed. And then I think just the final point I just wanted to make, again, on paragraph 8.1 around the gender pay gap, you'll notice that, again, this is data as at 31st of March 2024, just because gender pay gap figures are published on an annual basis, that obviously our figures have actually improved. We had a little bit of a spike the previous year in March 2023, but again, there's been some real improvements again in terms of our gender pay gap figure, reducing down to 3.8% as a median figure, and a average or mean figure of 3.7%. Again, so that puts us in a really good position. And again, nationally, the median gender pay gap figure is actually run at 8.1%. Again, for that same period of March 2024. So again, a good overall figure for the council, and something that we're always again looking at and reviewing how we're undertaking recruitment activities again across the council. So looking at, I don't think there's anything else I wanted to point out in terms of the report. It's fairly standard, but just wanted to point out some of the changes that have happened since last time. So I'm happy to take any questions before I have to leave the meeting. Thank you.
The chair seems to have left the meeting for the moment.
Okay.
Councillor Goodjohn, would you like to take control as the vice chair for the time being? Councillor Goodjohn? Can any member hear me, just to check?
I can hear you, Karen.
Me also, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I hear you.
Yes. Okay.
Although, Karen, I did have problems a few minutes ago, and I did think I would need to leave the meeting, but I seem to be okay. So as long as you can hear me, I'm okay.
Of course, Councillor Goodjohn, I can't seem to. Councillor Goodjohn, would you like to take control for the moment while we wait for Councillor Prothero? I can't see any members raising their hands other than Councillor Hanks. Have you got a question?
There's a message to say the chair's had a power cut.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. Oh, right, okay, that's understandable then. So Councillor Goodjohn, would you mind taking over as Vice Chair?
That's absolutely fine. So
yeah.
we'll take questions first then, yes, while Laith and Tracy are still here. Sally, do you have one?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Laith if he could, what was the reasoning behind the change from the independent remuneration panel to the new function of the Democratic and Democracy and Boundary Commission? And will that then affect members as well? Will that be passed, or is it not the case? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to answer that. To answer Councillor Hanks, I'm not entirely sure about the reasons for the change. I know this because this report is produced again from a HR and legal perspective. They were the ones that advised us of that change. And I'm aware that obviously the independent remuneration panel would discuss anything around pay to do with, from members to chief officers and so on. So I understand that all they're doing is moving those functions into this new body. So I don't think anything is going to change from that respect, apart from it just being coming as under an additional body, I suppose.
Yes, Laith, I can confirm that is correct, Chair. We took a report to Democratic Services a couple of months ago, just to confirm that change was being taken place, which has been Welsh Government appointed the IRPW and have obviously now transferred that function to the Commission. Our understanding is it's not to affect any changes to members, other than obviously this new commission now will take on the role and we'll look at reviewing members' pay allowances on an annual basis, like the IRPW have done.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Do we have any other questions? No? Okay, otherwise we'll let Laith and Tracy go before we make a decision.
Okay. Thank you. We'll leave now.
Thank you. I'm going to double check they're gone. Karen, can you triple check they're gone?
Yes, I can confirm, Chair, both of them have gone, as well as the other officers. Thank you.
Fantastic. Do we have any comments that people want to make before we go to the recommendations while officers are gone? No, I don't see any. Okay, fantastic. We'll go to the recommendations if I pull them up very quickly. So that the changes to the pay policy have been referred to us for consideration. Do we have any further comments? I don't think we do. To bring back to Cabinet? No? Okay, well, then Cabinet will be able to agree the pay policy and forward it on to full council for our discussion at full council on the 10th of March. In that case, can I have a hand to move that? Yes?
I'll move those.
Thank you. And Will Joe's back, so we'll take Councillor Prothero's back in the role.
Just to confirm, Chair and Vice Chair, that the reference will no need to go back to Cabinet now. That Cabinet decision that was made automatically now goes on to full council because the committee has not made any comments. So no doubt that will be mentioned at council, but just for information and for those people viewing online. Thank you.
Handing back over then, now that that's agreed.
Thank you.
Again, Chair, if you can just bear with us, we are going to be contacting the officers now to come back in, and as soon as they've all arrived back in, we can commence the business of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And apologies to all committee members there. We actually had a power cut in the street, if you can believe that. Everything went off for 5 minutes and then the alarm started going off when it came back on again. So you can't make it up, can you? Honestly.
Chair, the officers are back. Thank you.
Marvellous. Thank you, Karen. Okay, thank you for stepping in there, Vice Chair. That was almost seamless. Thank you ever so much. Right, let's move on then to agenda item 5. Okay, that's the report of the Chief Executive. This is the draft Vale Glamorgan corporate plan 2025-2030. Vale 2030, which I think is a very catchy name for it. Thank you, Tom. If you'd like to take us through the report.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair, and good evening, committee. Thank you for taking this report this evening. This is going to be a bit of a double act between myself and Helen this evening. So as you say, Chair, this is presenting back to your committee the draft corporate plan. This is after the consultation process has been concluded, and Helen will talk a bit about that later on. So just as a way of quick introduction to the report, the corporate plan, or Vale 2030 as it's being called, is our organisation's key strategic document. It talks about how the vision of strong communities with a bright future is going to be brought to life over the next 5 years, and importantly the outcomes that we're seeking to achieve from the work that we'll undertake to improve wellbeing in the Vale of Glamorgan. There's a statutory basis for developing and delivering a corporate plan, predominantly through the Local Government and Elections Act, but also the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which I know this committee are particularly aware of. And as the current plan ends in March of this year, therefore a new plan needs to be approved and published, which sets out our priorities for the coming 5 years. So this report this evening sets out an overview of the process that we've undertaken in terms of consultation. It also gives some reference to the panel performance assessment, which I know members are aware of, having been undertaken recently, and also then provides you with an opportunity to comment on the revised plan following the consultation and before Cabinet consider this in a few weeks' time. So the new corporate plan, or Vale 2030, brings together a huge range of different information and actions within it. In delivering and developing that new plan, we've consulted widely on our vision, on the values of the organisation and the objectives that we're going to pursue to deliver wellbeing in the Vale of Glamorgan. And it shows 5 new wellbeing objectives, which are based around our ambitions for the place and people within the Vale of Glamorgan. So creating great places to live, work and visit is the first of the objectives. Respecting and celebrating the environment is the second. Giving everyone a good start in life and supporting, protecting those who need us are the 2 people-based objectives. And finally, there's an objective around being the best council that we can be. The council needs to ensure that this plan reflects on our current priorities and pressures and challenges, so that a wide range of people, importantly the public, our elected members and staff, understand what our key priorities are for the coming years. Helen's going to talk a little bit about the consultation, but in developing the plan, you can see information in paragraph 2.8 in terms of the breadth of things that we've considered as part of developing this particular plan. I know that when we've spoken at your committee, Chair, in the past, elected members have voiced calls to ensure that this work focuses on the outcomes that we want to deliver. And within this plan, I'm pleased that we've been able to work closely with the Future Generations Commissioner's Office to look at making sure that it has more of a future focus and it talks more about outcomes. It also highlights the important challenges around tackling poverty, the climate and nature emergencies and inequalities, as well as highlighting the importance of involving residents, working in partnership and embedding the principles of placemaking, all of things that are going to be taken forward as part of the reshaping programme. I mentioned in particular that there's a stronger emphasis on tackling and preventing poverty within the plan. And rather than that being a single section of the corporate plan, this version now shows that those actions and deliverables run across all 5 of the objectives. And also in terms of the consultation and engagement we've done with a range of different people, and in particular those people that we're working with, there's been an inclusion within this corporate plan of a statement around the values that we have as an organisation, but talking about what partner organisations can expect of us when they're working with the council. So I mentioned that a huge range of different information and resources have been considered in developing the corporate plan, and also in response to feedback from elected members, and in particular members of this committee. Paragraph 2.8 sets out the architecture of the plan. So for each of the objectives, we've talked about why we feel it's important to pursue. We've talked about the ambition that we want to achieve in terms of the outcomes that we want to deliver, and then the actions that as an organisation we will take, linking that with other relevant plans and activities. And also, and this was something that your committee commented on when we were developing the earlier draft of the plan, and we committed to do some further work on within each of the sections for each of the wellbeing objectives. We've also included information about the data that we're going to be regularly reviewing to understand our progress and the continuing challenges. Some of that data is based on our performance, so for example, recycling rates, but also some of the data is much wider than that. So that might be things like healthy weight or unemployment figures. And the purpose of that is to show us the awareness of the environment that we're working in, the issues that we're looking to tackle, and also where we need to take action throughout the plan's length. So the actions within Vale 2030 are really broad-ranging. The council delivers a huge and complex breadth of services. It also shows how the council is proposing to change and the importance of partnership working. And I'm going to hand over now, Chair, to Helen, who's going to take us through some of the consultation and other work that's happened since your committee and other members saw the draft back in 2024.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Tom. So as Tom mentioned, I'm just going to pull out some of the information and detail regarding the consultation that was undertaken in the autumn of last year, so from October through to December. And as when we brought the draft plan to committees at the end of last year, we emphasised how the plan itself had been shaped from the engagement that we'd undertaken in the summer around sort of testing those draft objectives, and also all the information that had been gathered through the Let's Talk work and the Make Your Mark work with young people, as well as intelligence gathered through the placemaking work. So considerable amount of information had already shaped the drafting of the plan. And then, as I say, we undertook the consultation over the 8-week period. That was done through the online platform of Participate Vale. There was an executive summary and a plan on a page made available, as well, as we were aware that not everybody would necessarily want to read the full plan, but there were also extracts from the plan included within the survey, so that as people were answering the questions, they could see the content of the plan. We shared all the details of the consultation as normal with our partners, those through to town and community councils, the health board, asking them to help with promoting that work. And we then attended a number of meetings to support discussions around the plan. So that included the Equalities Consultative Forum, trade unions, 50+ Forum, Youth Council, as well as all 5 scrutiny committees. And Appendix B that's attached to this evening's report sets out the results of the survey, as well as details from the different meetings and conversations that we had around the plan and the action that we have taken in response to the comments raised. So it's quite clear in terms of how we have responded to those issues and where changes have been made within the plan. We also had a number of public drop-in sessions as well, and although these weren't as well attended as we would have liked, they did give us an opportunity to share more information about the plan, and also colleagues in the placemaking team also took the opportunity at some of their sessions to promote the consultation as well. And we particularly in those public drop-in sessions and stakeholder sessions had a session about the statement that Tom referred to earlier about working in partnership with others, so we could explore with some of our partners what that meant in more detail, as well as emphasising the inclusion within the corporate plan of the work around tackling poverty. We also provided opportunities for staff to comment on the plan with us, and there was a dedicated learning cafe session as well, so that we could again talk more around the plan and what that would mean for staff, as well as the conversations that took place with trade unions through the Change Forum. And we also engaged with head teachers as key partners as well. So the chief executive attended a number of meetings with head teachers as well to explain the direction that the corporate plan was taking, the content, and also the context within schools for the corporate plan itself. As I said, Appendix B provides detail around the consultation that was undertaken and the responses received. We had 257 responses to the online survey. Not everybody commented on all objectives, and that was something that we were keen to include within the survey so that people could just comment on those objectives that they felt most relevant to themselves if they didn't feel that they wanted to complete the whole of that survey. It's not a huge number of responses, but it is consistent with what we often have on these wider range surveys, which is why we try and cast the net wider in terms of the other information that we use to help shape the plan and sort of sense check some of those responses through the survey as well. And again, that's why I think it's important to look at that full range of responses that we've detailed within Appendix B. In terms of the responses and the issues that came through in that consultation, those conversations, they related to engagement, the environment, transport, different aspects of housing, supporting families and young people. There were issues raised around capacity to deliver that ambition. So where some of the comments were supportive of the ambition within the plan, there was concern around some of the financial challenges around that. And as you will see, we have made a number of changes to the plan now in response to the information that we received through the consultation and further conversations that we've had with key officers as well. Within the committee's report today, we also have included information about the panel performance assessment. As members will be aware, this took place during the consultation period on the plan, and this was timed this way to enable us to incorporate the findings and the recommendations from that work into the revised draft of the plan. And you'll see within the report, we've set out what the recommendations were that came through from the panel assessment and the work that we've done now to particularly strengthen elements of partnership working within the corporate plan and to give it a wider focus in terms of the place of the Vale, as opposed to just those things within the council's control, but actually that wider work that we do. If I just highlight some of the key changes that we've made then since members saw the draft of the plan in the autumn, and these are detailed on page 11 of the committee report from 2.30 onwards. The title has changed to Vale 2030. There were a number of comments around the corporate plan not being the most engaging way to describe the plan and the ambition and sort of the vision that we've tried to capture within that 5-year plan. So we've add a new title now of Vale 2030 in order to reflect that responding to the consultation. The forward has changed to be a message from the leader and the chief executive. It was felt that that would be more engaging, and we've also amended some of the content within that to make more reference to placemaking and how the plan is relevant for communities across the Vale, and that emphasis on partnership working, which we've strengthened throughout the plan itself. Section 1, which is on page 5 of the actual plan, is a new section, and this is where we've particularly responded to the recommendations from the panel assessment to better articulate some of the actions and the outcomes that will be taken forward through the plan, and more to tell the story of what the plan will deliver. And this is also reflective of the changes to the plan on a page document that will be produced to accompany the final plan itself. The delivering for our communities section 2 of the plan, this has again been changed. So we've just slightly changed the order of this to have more of a community focus. The figures that are within the draft plan at the moment are reflective of the draft budget. So these will be amended once the budget is finalised and for the final publication of the plan. We've also updated the list of achievements within the plan. So this sort of provides the bridge between the current corporate plan of 2020 to 25 and the new plan, and how we're building on work undertaken. So additional achievements have been added. Section 3 has also been changed quite a bit. It's been consolidated more to make it easier for people to engage with, and we've moved more information to the rear of the plan. So we're still emphasising those key areas that Tom highlighted earlier around engagement and poverty, but have moved some of the detail more to the rear of the plan so that it's clearer and easier for people to engage with. And we've incorporated the statement about working with others much more within the body of the plan rather than a separate section. So again, again, it sort of clearly articulates the importance of that and our values in terms of taking forward that work. Moving on to sort of the changes with regards to the actions under each of the 5 objectives. The format for each of the objectives has stayed very much the same as in the draft plan. So very much we set out why the objective is important, the outcomes and the actions that will be delivered. We've included more information about the data that will help us understand our progress, and also the plans and partnership activity that will very much support the plan. Within Objective 1 then, some of the key changes that we've made there, and a number of the actions we've amended the wording to, but just wanted to highlight key changes this evening. The action around regeneration in Barry has been expanded to actually include reference to the specific programmes that will be taken forward as part of that, the investment and regeneration within Barry itself. With regards to some of the other actions within this section, we've widened those, and we've made reference to the Sustainable Community for Learning programme and emphasising the work across the Vale that will happen in conjunction to that more focused work in Barry. And very much in response to a number of comments that we've received, we've made specific reference to our age-friendly activity. So that is now included as a standalone action. And that was something that was commented on through a number of means. So that is one of the changes that we've made. In Objective 2, respecting and celebrating the environment, we've clarified more the action around the local area energy plan, and we've also expanded the action around the work around the food strategy to incorporate much more the work of our food and farming officer with regards to work with local food producers and sustainability, and more reference to rural communities. Objective 3, giving everyone a good start in life. We've removed an action that was duplication there, so that's one of the changes. But in order to emphasise much more the work around community-focused schools and also work that's being undertaken to increase attendance in our schools, those have been simplified into 2 standalone actions now, as opposed to previously a combined action. So it shows the emphasis much more on that activity. Objective 4, supporting protecting those who need us. There's just been some minor changes to that action, but through the consultation there was a lot of support for that focus on our work with more vulnerable members of the community, and particularly discussion with the Youth Forum. That was actually the objective that resonated more with our young people. Objective 5, being the best council we can be, we've added an outcome on Welsh language to reflect the work that will be undertaken there. And we reworded the actions in this section. This was the objective that, although there was support for the objective, some of the comments around the actions within this objective, there was less support for, although some of the responses in the survey showed that the actions that people were talking around are covered elsewhere within the corporate plan. But we have taken the opportunity to reword this section to try and clarify more that range of actions that sort of will provide some of the foundations for the other activities within the plan, particularly emphasising work around engagement and inclusion of an action around a customer strategy in the work that will be undertaken there. So those are the main changes to the actions under the objectives. But as I say, a number of the actions have been reworded just to make them clearer. We've slightly modified the section around tackling poverty. And again, there was a lot of support for the inclusion of that emphasis on work within the plan on that area. So we've just simplified some of that, and just very minor changes to section 6 around our performance management. And as I mentioned earlier, we've moved more information to the rear of the plan, to the additional information section. So there's clearer information about how we'll be listening to our residents, placemaking, the Wellbeing Future Generations Act, and the inclusion of the glossary. All of these changes will now also be reflected in the revised executive summary and plan on a page as well. But that really was just to highlight some of the key elements that came through in terms of how we undertook the consultation and the responses received, and what changes that has led to within the plan. I'm going to hand back to Tom now, who's just going to pick up on some of the next steps.
Brilliant, thank you, Helen. And just very quickly, members, the report that you've got before you this evening also talks about the fact that with the new corporate plan comes an opportunity for us to look at the way that this plan and its delivery is scrutinised and monitored. And paragraph 2.34 talks about some of those processes that are underway. So looking at the annual delivery plan that we've previously had, the self-assessment, service plans and scrutiny processes. and this reflects on some of the comments that Helen was making earlier in terms of the findings from both the consultation with committees such as yourselves, but also the panel performance assessment. And we've also been reflecting internally about making sure that the timing of all of these things links up as efficiently as it can do to present the information in a coherent way to yourselves as elected members. So the work that is currently being taken forward is based on replacing the current 15 service plans that have got a huge range of actions within them, and replacing those with 5 directorate plans. They're going to be reported to Cabinet and Scrutiny committees in the next couple of months. We're also taking a new approach informed by our learning from elsewhere and the recommendations of the PPA to reflect on how resource intensive, but also how significant in terms of volume our current reporting can be. And it's been very useful to have meetings with the chairs and vice chairs of scrutiny committees and the group leaders to start to discuss how some of these aspects of corporate performance can be linked up and reviewed. And we're also going to be moving away from the previous annual delivery plan that was produced, started to be produced in the autumn prior to the budget being developed, and replacing that with an annual statement which will be informed by Vale 2030, the directorate plans and also the budget, and then published very early in the new financial year so that it articulates specifically what's going to be delivered as areas of focus and priority for the coming year. So just finally, Chair, and thank you for giving us the time to go through this in lots of detail this evening. The timetable is set out in paragraph 237, so it's been brought to your committee this evening for your consideration. Your views will go on to Cabinet then on the 6th of March, and then full council will consider the final draft of the corporate plan on the 10th of March for delivery from April. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Helen. It's fair to say that this corporate plan, Vale 2030, has definitely been considered and really well considered. From my perspective as a member, we talked about the consultation and the engagement. I've been to countless meetings where we've talked about it and given our feedback. And I know from the consultation that actually a lot of that feedback has been acted on and changes have been made, which I think is a real positive. The new wellbeing objectives, they're clear, they're unambiguous, moving from 15 service plans to 5 directorate plans, and then having our other documents, our annual delivery plan, whatever, to flow into this and from this makes absolute sense. So I'm really, really pleased that we've done that. I'm wondering now if any of the members would like to comment before I go into any questions. No hands? No? The only other comment then that I would make, Councillor Carroll, here we are. Please come in.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. Just to clarify, is this for questions on the corporate plan?
Yes, please, go for it.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Carol.
Well, from my point of view, I am somewhat concerned by this document, actually. I think the most important thing for this council to focus on is productivity. That's the way we will improve services and improve service provision. However, the word productivity doesn't feature once within this draft corporate plan or within the report. Are you sure the plan has the right focus?
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Tom, would you like to explain what the plan covers? Thank you.
Certainly, and thank you for the question, Councillor Carroll. I think the corporate plan needs to do a huge range of things. It needs to talk about improving wellbeing for the citizens of the Vale of Glamorgan. It also needs to provide that strategic context for the services that we deliver and how we go about doing that work. Completely take on board the comment around how we work and how we focus on delivering the services that the council seeks to deliver, and that's one of the emphases rather in Wellbeing Objective 5 in terms of being the best council that we can be. And whilst the word productivity doesn't appear in the plan in the way that you're questioning, there are a range of different actions that I would say point to our emphasis on productivity. So looking at how we can use digital technology to improve services, for example, ensuring though at the same time they're accessible in different methods as we need to do those things. There's a commitment in there as well around delivering a customer strategy. Again, that's looking at how we improve services, and as part of that, there's some work underway that I think we've mentioned at previous committees around reviewing customer journeys and how we can use different technologies such as artificial intelligence, which I know is something that you and I have talked about in the past in order to improve that productivity. And then there's some wider ranging work around our transformation programme, so how we're looking at focusing in on service transformation, but also our operating model. So there are definitely references to how we work and how we provide those services. In addition, I would say, to the context information that's within the corporate plan. So some of the information around our available resources, our staffing profile, and some of those things. So this is a really high level report and strategy, as you'd expect of a corporate plan. There are lots and lots of pieces of the jigsaw that sit underneath it, which we've tried to make reference to, such as the medium-term financial plan and that transformation strategy. So certainly there are references to changing how we work with an emphasis on value for money.
But with respect, Tom, the term value for money only appears 3 times in the report. Efficiency, I think, comes up twice. Now, I appreciate this isn't an annual delivery plan. This is basically an overview of how the council is going to deliver on its objectives, and then services will come from that. But it does set the tone and the strategic direction, and I think that this plan has it all off, because productivity isn't mentioned. I appreciate the examples that you've cited from within the report. Value for money gets 3 mentions. Efficiency gets 2 mentions. By contrast, equality gets 182 mentions. Diversity, 4 mentions. Inclusion, 6 mentions. I think there's too much of an emphasis on that sort of thing, rather than the services that the authority exists to provide. And there is a real risk when you go down that route that you get distracted from what the authority is here for. It's not here to embrace that sort of radical ideology that is being dropped elsewhere in the world, as I've mentioned at previous committees. It's here to provide core services. I mean, waste collections gets 1 mention throughout this report. Roads, 2 mentions. Resurfacing, once within the consultation feedback, but not at all in the draft plan. Parks, 3 times. Fly tipping, twice. Even social care, which is a huge thing for this authority, just the 17 mentions throughout the report. So I think that I would like to see this recalibrated and focus on what this authority is here for, which is service provision, because I think this authority could do a lot better in terms of its performance. I think that we're going to be discussing the budget on the next item, so I'll hang fire on my criticisms for that to that item. But this is supposed to be a 5-year plan, and I think it's taking this authority in completely the wrong direction.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. I think you'll find that some of the detail that you request will probably be in the directorate plans. There will be 5 individual directorate plans that will feed under this. I can see we've got another hand, and that's Councillor Goodjohn. So would you like to come in on this question? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just very quickly start by saying diversity is only mentioned about 5 times. It's not whatever 100 and something that was mentioned previously. I don't think we can do governing by word count. But anyway, moving on to my comments, I think generally there's been a dramatic improvement in the plan to the draft that we were shown a few months ago. I think generally one of the problems, as we discussed at Governance and Audit a couple of nights ago, one of the biggest problems that we've had as an authority has been focusing so much on the organisation itself internally, which has been understandable under years of austerity that we've had to focus within and trying to make a difference within the organisation to try and save money, save costs, and try and be as efficient as possible from that lens, from a more corporate lens. But at the end of the day, we're in the public sector. And since we're in the public sector, we need to be thinking about the well-being as per the Well-being of Future Generations Act, the well-being of everyone in the Vale and every single person. So I totally understand what's been said previously. We don't need to be just thinking about the bins, and we don't need to be just thinking about the very statutory services we provide, but also about the health and well-being of the entire county, about the education of our young people, and also the services that we provide to everyone in the long term, right? On this, I think there's been some big improvements in the plan, moving away from, we're going to implement this specific strategy that no one understands what it does in the public, because why would you? These statutory plans that we're forced to create and turn it into something that's more livable, breathable. People can understand the objectives are far clearer of what we're trying to do. I think overall the plan is far better, but I think there's one part of the plan which has kind of missed out on this, which is wellbeing objective 5, the best council that we can be. So I just want to ask a couple of questions quickly on that. So you mentioned, for example, Helen, that we've put in delivering a new a customer strategy. Is that a new customer strategy, or is that we're going to be delivering the customer strategy that we already have, and potentially the same for the strategic quality plan as well?
Thank you, Councillor Good John. Tom, would you like to come back in on that question then? Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Good John. In terms of the customer strategy, in the past, we have had a customer relations strategy that's a number of years old now, and it is definitely time for us to do a new piece of work around that area of our work. So work is starting to look at the way that people can access our services, whether that's digitally, whether that's via the telephone, or whether that's face-to-face, and also using some new technologies, so things like chatbots, but also other mechanisms such as direct messaging and that kind of thing. So it's at an early stage, but it links to some of the work that's underway as part of reshaping, looking at both digital but also service transformation and ensuring that we get the basics right. So Brilliant Basics, as committee will be aware, is a major strand of reshaping. So that's all the kind of work that is part of a new customer strategy. In terms of the strategic equality plan, there is a statutory duty placed on local authorities to produce a strategic equality plan and to report on it. That strategic equality plan is being redrafted currently. The new version of it is going to be going to Cabinet later on in March. It reflects some of the commitments in the new corporate plan and would look to then be delivered over the next 4 years. It's got a slightly different timescale for its delivery.
Thanks, Tom. Just to follow up on that, I think there was also mention about the new the inclusion of the Welsh language and promotion of the use of the Welsh language. And I think this kind of links in with the customer strategy. I think the wording of this is still a little bit off where we actually are as an organisation, where we want to be. culturally, because I think there has been some significant change we've had in the last 2 years of understanding inside these committees with officers and leadership, of understanding that there needs to be quite significant change in the way that we do things, not just in the services we provide, but the way we're talking with people, with our communities, because I think there's been a recognition that it has been lacking overall in the past, and we need to change that quite rapidly. So I think some of the wording of some of these goals is quite difficult to see where the change is coming from. So like promotion of the use of the Welsh language, well, we're doing that anyway. Can we strengthen the wording of some of these? Delivering a customer strategy, well, what does that actually mean? You know, when you're talking about, yeah, we can update the customer strategy, can we talk about what we're doing and that we're going to have a new strategy, and, you know, some of the very basics of what you're saying there within the goal. And finally, I would say, just to make it a bit more friendly, I think even referring back to some of the points that Councillor Carroll made, at the end of the day, transforming our services is probably the number one thing that we're trying to do, and we're trying to innovate. We're trying to improve the innovation of the services, to try and improve productivity, to try and improve the experience that everyone has when they call the call center or they use our website, to try and save them time and make it as understandable as possible. So I wonder if you'd agree, first off, with the fact that what we're trying to do is probably a bit more ambitious and a bit more radical than, you know, what is currently being said here, and if any of that makes sense to you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. And I think it is a point well made in terms of wellbeing Objective 5. And certainly what I can undertake to do, if committee are minded to recommend it, is that we could look at the outcomes within Objective 5 that I think do have that slightly more visionary emphasis to them. And we can have a look at the wording in terms of the actions within that objective to see if there's an opportunity to draw out some more of that innovation and reflect on the comments from committee members, including yourself this evening.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. One of the things I didn't comment, and I'll just say it quickly before I bring the leader in because she's patiently waiting, and these were comments that I know were made by a number of members, also Councillor Carroll. It's being able to actually show progress, and it's being able to measure and have those outcomes. And I know that we are making a different approach this time round with having measurable outcomes and using data so that we can show progress, as well as the perception type based stuff that people living in the Vale feel that things are better. And I think that's a really positive step because it's tangible and it is something that we can see that we're making progress when we refer back to data that we're starting with and seeing it changing and going in the right direction. So that's a real positive. Okay, so Leader, would you like to come in now? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If I can, it's interesting. It's interesting, isn't it? This word productivity. It can be multifaceted, can't it? It can be how many parcels you can chuck out of an Amazon delivery van or something like that, can't you? But it also is whether or not we deliver a better service for our residents, because at the end of the day, we are a public service. And so if you have a look at page 17 in the plan, it talks about changing how we work. It talks about further on, it talks about the reshaping agenda, the transformation agenda, innovation. And those can be, they can be just words, but that section brings it to life. It talks about involving our communities, working more closely with them. And it was quite interesting I was speaking at One Voice Wales conference, and representatives of two Vale Town and Community Councils came up to me and they talked to me about, on page 21, well, 21 and 22, I'm just looking at, is the commitment, the how we lay out our commitment to those that work with us. So people will know, whether that be a community organisation, town and community councils, that sort of thing, that if we work in partnership, and that is one of the key ways ahead within this plan, that this is what they can expect. And if actually we aren't delivering, they can come back to us and say, you know, this isn't working. It's this bit on your commitment that we don't think is quite right. And it gives us something to have a conversation. In terms of the transformation agenda, this is not just about, you know, cutting services, costing more, whatever else. It's about transforming those. Ewan just talked about the digital transformation, but actually we can look at different ways to do all sorts of services, and it would be great if we could involve the residents of the Vale. But on that, I come back to other ones of Councillor Carroll's concerns, and I would reassure him. The whole point of talking about diversity, equity and inclusion is because not everybody in the Vale lives the same life. And if we want to deliver effective services to the people of the Vale, we have to understand those lives. We have to understand the challenges they face, whether they're tiny children, older relatives, people with disabilities, people from different cultural and ethnic backgrounds. We need to understand those so that we can work with and for them more effectively. And that's why looking at the shared experience of life in the Vale of our residents is so very important to us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. Do we have any other questions? Councillor Johnson, please come in.
Yeah, diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much. Just a few comments in relation to the document that we have in front of us. Appreciate the amendments. Since the draft came to the committee in October, I think one of the most important things is the more detailed explanation in relation to how we're setting about, in terms of data, identifying exactly what's taking place, and that's happening via data, which is quantitative for the large part, but there are some subjective and objective. Also seeing the thread between the ambition and the action to reach that ambition is important within this document. But the reality is, there's something I say over and over, we can be ambitious and we can use the positive vocabulary in terms of ambition, but the reality is nobody, apart from one or 2 points, nobody's going to argue against these types of ambitions. And the reality is we'll have to see, by setting baselines and via the scrutiny committees, taking a closer look at this on a point-by-point basis, just how successful we are over the years. And we do need to be ready to challenge or interrogate the data to understand how good it is and how representative it truly is. Or how good the data is. Is it really reflective of the situation that people see on a day-to-day basis? And this is something that we can see and understand in more detail over the years to come. I'll come back to the point that we have 5 objectives here in the plan. And just to note the need to understand how this ties in to scrutiny work in the council, and just to make sure that we get that structure right. There are 10 points, more or less, for each of the objectives. So I think it is important to make sure that scrutiny is effective in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Sorry, Tom, I was just agreeing with him because I agree absolutely. And the need to have those measurable objectives, and that scrutiny will play a part in ensuring that they're met and that we can see that journey is really important. And it is something that's strong in this report, and I'm really glad. I'm going to let you come back in now. I just wanted to agree with him. Thank you.
My apologies for that. And thank you, Councillor Johnson, for the comments and the question. I should have said in presenting the report earlier that that range of data and measures that we've included within each of the objective section is illustrative of the kind of set of data and information that we'll be looking at. It's not everything, but absolutely that there is a real desire for us to show the workings, if you like, between why something has been selected as an objective and how we're going to see the progress that is being made. Within those 5 directorate plans that I mentioned earlier, there will be a whole set of measures, including targets that will be set and proposed for scrutiny to consider in the next couple of months. It'll include all the things that are in the corporate plan, but also many more, and that will allow you to have that basis to track, scrutinise, interrogate, and understand the picture holistically. And absolutely, in terms of the work around scrutiny, the structure, the way that we present information and data to yourselves as elected members. And that's something that I'm really grateful that we've had elected member feedback on to date, and we'll be obviously continuing to have those conversations in the next couple of months as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Franks, would you like to come in now? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking for some reassurance and evidence of reassurance, because I always get concerned when we say the last plan was not good enough, but this plan, which will replace it, is a big improvement. Now, will we, in 5 years' time, those of us who are around, will we be saying the current plan that we are examining was flawed, and our new plan in 5 years' time will be much better? What is the answer to that? And I don't want to put Tom on the spot. It'd be good to have the comment of the leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. Leader, would you like to come back in? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'm quite happy to. Actually, we're not saying that anything was flawed. We're saying things are of their time, aren't we? And this is the time for doing things differently. I think that you would have looked at corporate plans that were developed in 2010 or something, and it would have been very different to the corporate plans that have had to be written throughout the austerity that we faced over years. But I think the experience that we've had during those times is that it is actually far better to work with as well as for our communities. And, the difference we can make if we all, as Vale residents, work together, we can achieve so much more. There are so many synergies. And also we can actually, I was talking to somebody only yesterday about their 13-year-old son that goes out litter picking. People are doing amazing things around the Vale. So this plan is of its time. It's the right time for it. When we had the PPA, they talked about it being timely, and it is timely, and it is right for the Vale at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. Do we have any other comments that committee members would like to make?
Chair, I did ask for evidence, and I didn't hear any evidence. I heard about a 13-year-old boy. Well, excellent. Okay. Well done. We don't need a corporate plan for a 13-year-old lad to go collecting litter. What I'm asking is, what evidence have we got that this will make a big difference? And it's all very well the leader saying we've all got to pull together and united we stand type of thing. But I must say the reputation of this authority is so low that I don't see us travelling along that road very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. And I don't think the leader needs me to speak for her when she was trying to give you an example of how times are changing in the Vale. But leader, would you like to come back in? Thank you. Not sure if we've still got the leader with us, or if there's another power cut happening somewhere else in the Vale tonight. These things are sent to try us. Tom, would you be able? Oh.
So I was just going to say, Chair, that the leader is still connected. I'm just wondering if she's able to press the activation button just in case it's not registered.
Am I back? Hey. Yes, there we are. Excellent.
Back in the room. We said there's more power cuts going on in the Vale tonight.
I think I'm all right. It's wet and cold, but it's all right. No, I was just really disappointed, because one of the things that we've actually looked at on this is just how many people have contributed to their thoughts on this plan. We specifically arranged the panel performance assessment so that we could get the input of independent public sector experts from across the UK, not just Welsh ones, but from across the UK. We've been out to voluntary sector, we've been out to organisations. There have been an awful lot of eyes on this plan, and it's been amended in line with any views, and it has been widely accepted and quite often praised. So I really do find it difficult to accept the comments that Councillor Franks has made this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. Any other comments from anybody else tonight, please, on Vale 2030? No? Okay. We have some other items to debate, so I think we'll move on to the recommendations. Now, they were that we consider the updated draft corporate plan at Appendix A, the consultation feedback at Appendix B, and the quality impact assessment at Appendix C, which I believe we have, and that we refer our comments to Cabinet for their consideration ahead of approval on the 10th of March. So if it's possible to have a summary of comments, Karen, and I appreciate an awful lot was said, that would be really helpful. In addition to that, there was one single recommendation that I think Councillor Goodjohn made and Tom was happy to take, and that was for the wellbeing objective outcome 5, for us to look at the outcome itself and revise the wording to help make it a stronger wellbeing objective. I believe that's what you wanted to see as a recommendation, wasn't it, Councillor Goodjohn?
Yes, absolutely. And with the comments that I made being there, it should be quite clear what is meant by that.
That's great. Thank you, everybody. So can we have a hand to move, please, from this item? Thanks, Councillor Goodjohn. And seconder? Thanks, Councillor Lovelock-Edwards. Marvellous. Right then, let's move on to agenda item 6. So this is a reference from Cabinet from the 16th of January 2025. This is our initial budget 2025-26, a medium-term financial plan for 25-26 to 29-30. This is a proposal, so we aren't there yet. And I believe we've got a number of reference as well that we've had from other scrutiny committees that, once we've debated, is for us to note and pass the views on if we all agree with them, from Homes and Safer Communities, from Learning and Culture, and also from the Environment and Regeneration Committee. So I believe we have Tom or Matt to take us through the initial budget. We have Matt.
Good evening. It's going to be both Tom and myself. I've got a presentation to introduce the item. I'm going to give the broad overview at a council level, and Tom's going to come and speak specifically on the cost pressures in his directorate and the savings that are coming forward from corporate resources, and also some of the policy level savings as well. So I could just share my screen. I don't know with Democratic Services colleagues if that share screens come through to you.
Oh, sorry, Matt, when you said you were sharing your screen then, I thought you were sending the request. If you bear with us 1 second.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that showing at all, Chair? I'm getting waiting for source at the moment. Is that the same for yourself?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, just bear with me 1 moment. So I've just approved your request, Matt, if you would be so kind.
Yeah, I've just got coming through now.
Thank you. Have you selected that source, Matt?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. It's on screen for myself. Hopefully that's the same for you, Chair.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Has that moved on?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So it's going to take about, I'm getting an echo at the moment. That's better. So the presentation is going to take about 15-20 minutes to go through. It's going to cover quite a range of the key issues that are in the report. So just going over a little bit of the background, setting out the overall position as currently faced. Then, as said briefly, Tom's going to take us through the cost pressures and savings programme for corporate resources, talk a little bit about reserves, consultation, scrutiny ask, and then we'll pause the presentation, and then we'll finish the revenue item, and then we'll pick up capital as the next item on the agenda. So the background, just going over a bit of old ground here, it does seem quite a long process, and it's right that it is, and it's right that it has the attention that it has right across the summer and autumn. It started back in July with the approval of the Council's financial strategy. It's a slightly unusual year, but a positive development is that we're actually developing the budget alongside the new corporate plan and also the reshaping programme. We had a Chancellor's budget back in October, so quite a change in approach from government, albeit with little resource to play with. So we did see a tax in budget to repair public services, and the outcome of that was £1.7 billion consequentials for Wales, with money being targeted at a UK level at schools and social care. That's about £1 billion more than we potentially anticipated. We took a refresh of the medium-term financial plan then to Cabinet in November, and at that time we had underlying cost pressures of £34 million and a gap of 14.7. We had the Welsh government settlement just before Christmas, and just in the run-up of that, we were starting to get some in-year allocations for pay, both teachers and NJC, and also for teachers' pensions. And then we had, as I say, the settlement just before Christmas. That was a 4.3% increase across the whole of Wales. So just on the in-year transfers, that was really good news, and we waited a long time for some elements of that around, especially the teachers' pensions. The employers' pensions increased due to the revaluation of the teachers' pension fund. That was about £3 million of it. That did give us some headroom with some transfers into general grant for homelessness, which we already had covered in our base proposals. Overall, the increase was 4.3% across Wales. However, the Vale Glamorgan didn't fare quite as well. Our increase is 3.3 in the provisional settlement at £7.4 million, but positively that is a 2.4% increase on the 1% that we'd been forecasting, just having £2 million increase in the plan. There's quite a lot tucked away in the SSA movements in the settlement that does create some challenge. The schools block up by 10%, social services almost by 12%, and the fire block by 12%. And that does mean minimal increases for all other services, and areas such as council tax reduction scheme, where we've got a £1 million pressure, that SSA didn't move at all. We had a succession of the grant announcements coming through at the same time, and no major surprises there. There was good news for capital, and we've had an extra 620k, and we're assuming that same level going forward in future years of the capital programme. The settlement is good news, and it's also worth us looking at prospects going forward. Obviously, a taxing budget this time from the UK Chancellor, but the economic headwinds aren't particularly good at the moment. The UK economy is fairly flatlined over recent years, and the prospects for future growth are relatively low. We're looking at, from Bank of England, we're forecasting a 1.5% growth in the GDP in 2025, but they've most recently pulled that back to 0.75, albeit that they're increasing their forecasts in future years. So there is quite a tough environment we're operating in, and some of that's been caused by the exceptionally high inflation that persisted well into last year. That's caused quite a tightening of policy on interest Bank of England base rate that's only being slowly relaxed. So the headlines for us now, following the settlement and the budget that we put out to consult on, is that the overall gap is down to £8.045 million. The grant transfers in have been well received, addressing the pay and pensions challenges we've had in part, and that 3.3% increase in AEF, in aggregate external finance. The council tax is now modelled at 6.9%, but we also have the yield up for tax-based growth, and there's a single person discount review underway as well. So whilst the settlement's been well received, it does still fall short of all the financial pressures that the council is experiencing, especially around schools, ALN, social care, homeschool transport, etc. So we've managed in these set of proposals to accommodate £29 million of pressures, but the underlying pressures are closer to £40 million. The savings programme is £9 million, a little bit more than the gap because we had some one-off savings reversing from previous years. We've had a general approach of increasing fees and charges by 3%, and the reserves are currently under a review, and there'll be a proposal coming forward in the draft budget at the start of March. I'm not going to go through every number in here, but it just highlights where some of the pressures are coming through, and the relatively lesser increases in our funding. So funding's at £21 million. The main drivers of that are the transfers in. So those the 2024-5 grants coming in will be added to the settlement going forward. The 3.3% increase in AF, £8.5 million additional in council tax, mainly through the increase in the rent, but also because of the tax base and the reviews that we're undertaking. We had a approach of smoothing some transitory pressures back in 23-4, and those arrangements are starting to unwind. They're mainly covering off homelessness and the housing pressures at the moment, but those are looking to unwind perhaps a little bit earlier than we previously anticipated. There's some one-off support for schools around procurement and advice and guidance on curriculum to help them balance their budgets. Those are on the funding side, and on the pressure side, some minimal investment. Unfortunately, we're seeing continued demographic pressures, especially in social care and in our special school. Quite unusual level of inflation on pay, but that also includes the £3 million for the teachers' pensions. Inflation on pay mainly through provider fees in social care. Some of our capital financing needs have gone back a year or so. And then on the other pressures, a lot of that is about right-sizing the budget for some of the pressures that are coming through in 2024-5 in the current year. So at this point, I'm going to briefly hand over to Tom. And there's a couple of slides on the cost pressures that are impacted on corporate resources that we'll now go through.
Brill, thank you, Matt. And I won't take members through these line by line, but just to give you an overview in terms of the cost pressures that corporate resources as a director has identified and are included within the draft budget for consultation. There are net pressures of £173,000 across the Directorate. The vast majority of those pressures actually relate to activity that support the operation of the whole organisation. So you'll see within this slide that there are a number of IT-related cost pressures. These relate to things like contract inflation on various contracts, but also some further investment in systems relating to network management and security, some additional services to support the infrastructure of the data centre, as well as for firewalls, because those were invested in as part of the pandemic, and the support was capitalised when that purchase was made, so it now needs to be reflected in the budget going forward. There's also one cost pressure here that I wanted to draw members' attention to, relating to the Occupational Health Service. Previously, this was a recharge service across the organisation, but we never had a budget sufficient to support it. So alongside making some savings within that, the operating budgets for that part of the service, we're also looking to put some funding into the base for it as well. And if you don't mind, Matt, moving on to the next slide, if you could do. This slide then shows some other IT-related cost pressures relating to Microsoft licenses, which members be aware is one of the major systems used by the whole of the council. There's also then a correction in terms, or an adjustment rather, in terms of the energy budget. Matt was talking about the use of smoothing reserves earlier, and this is a reflection of the fact that we're taking some of that out of the budget. There's also then a pressure in here for the pay award relating to staff within corporate resources. So overall, net pressures of 173,000. I think the next slide then is back to you, Matt, in terms of pressures within the policy budget.
Yeah, so there's built into the budget are the increases in members' remuneration following the independent remuneration panel's findings. You'll have seen when I just talked about the SSA increases, there was a 12% increase in the SSA for fire. So the fire service under some financial pressure similar to ourselves. Thankfully, the fire levy hasn't, the proposal from them wasn't to increase the levy by that level. So it's at 450k, which is more like a 5% increase. We have pressures in the current financial year on our council tax reduction scheme, and the scheme going forward was approved by Cabinet just before Christmas. And that's a £1 million pressure that we need to build in. So there's £1.5 million policy pressures also going forward in the proposals at this time. So that's the pressures. Moving on to the savings, there are £9 million. There's a £9 million savings and proposals programme. The mix is certainly changing from previous years, where we're now at in the order of about 45–46% of our savings programme being through reshaping and transformation, and a smaller proportion through traditional tactical savings. We're working within the framework that was brought to Cabinet in terms of the reshaping and transformation prospectus back in October, and those are the key themes on the bottom of the slide around the target operating model, service transformation, strength of communities, digital innovation and economic resilience. We've been continuing to work through that prospectus and that approach to populate the future years of the medium-term financial plan as well. So there'll be more content on that when we come forward with the draft budget in a few weeks' time. And so that was the overview of the savings proposals, and now back to corporate resources, and Tom's going to come back and just talk briefly about these as well.
Well, thank you, Matt. And I mentioned net cost pressures of 173,000 in the proposals. What you've got now committee members is a list of the savings proposals for corporate resources, and these total 960,000. These are a mix of measures, and I'll briefly take you through them. So the first is looking at our operating model within digital services, so ICT, business improvement and parts of customer relations. Cabinet considered a report recently relating to that one. The second is looking at our Welsh language translation service for written content. We've been running a pilot over the last year in using Amazon translation services, and it's proposed that we will roll that out for further use in the coming year. The next is a future year saving. We're looking at digitising the records which are currently held in a physical environment in the records management unit, so there would be a saving in future years relating to the running costs of that premises. In terms of corporate landlord, a draft business case is under development and will be reported to Cabinet in the next few months. That will look at consolidating property-related functions from across the organisation into a single service, and we're looking at the potential to make or to deliver some initial savings as a result of consolidating those functions. Members will be aware that over the last couple of years we've had savings within the revenue budget for the Docs office. The £50,000 is the balance, if you like, of the running costs from the Doc office, and importantly for next year will be realised from reduced running costs and also some work that we've done recently to ensure that we can get a partial NNDR rebate from stopping using one of the floors within that building. As a directorate, we sell a series of our services, both in terms of to our schools, but to other organisations. So there's a target of increased income of 80,000 across a range of different services. I mentioned in terms of the cost pressures that there's some investment that is being proposed in certain ICT related services, but at the same time we've worked with the leadership team within digital to look at other budget headings where it's possible to take a reduction from non-pay related budgets. There's a proposal to take further savings from the Mayor's office. This follows reductions in recent years. And we've also undertaken a review across the whole of the directorate in terms of our headcount, and we're proposing that through a range of measures we'll be looking to reduce headcount of 5 currently across the directorate to save 205,000. And then just on the next slide, if we can do that, there's one final savings proposal here relating to some communications software. So we'll be relinquishing use of one of the modules in order to deliver a £10,000 savings. So in total, savings proposals of 960,000. And I think I'm coming back to you then, Matt, for policy savings.
Thanks, Tom. So these are going in the opposite direction. So we built in a couple of savings around investment income and the upside from internally borrowing into the budget in 23-4. These were only going to be temporary savings as the council's reserves and balances reduce. So reducing the potential for earning interest on investments, and then also starting to drive the need to actually go out and borrow rather than using our own accumulated reserves and balances. So both of those reverse out in 25-6. So Tom was probably heading in the direction of this next slide a couple of moments ago. We do, as a council, continue to see continual pressures in our schools and in social services, and that has been the focus of the increased resources from Welsh Government to the council, as well as I highlighted in the slide on those SSA allocations. So we're seeing quite significant growth in spend in learning and skills, 7.66%, schools just short of 7.5%, and social services 10.75%. Whereas the rest of the organisation, and these are some of our core services in environment and neighbourhood services, corporate resources that we're seeing this evening, and also place. We've been less able to build in pressures, and there's been a greater burden placed on the savings. Just worth noting in the others column, there is home to school transport in there, which is £1.1 million of growth. The reserves review is underway, and the reserves certainly in part are reducing in a planned way as they support the council's capital programme and capital commitments. But also, as we've seen in the current financial year, there are unplanned use of reserves because of pressures in social care in particular, but also around ALN. So the review will be undertaken, and we'll stick to some of our guiding principles that we've had over the last couple of years. So there'll be some statutory reserves that we need to maintain, primarily the general fund and the insurance reserves. There are service reserves which have commitments against them, but then we have a number of risk and smoothing reserves as well. So that's continuing to protect the council against known risks, but also to build in capacity to transform and reshape our services. So a number of reserves there around digital, general investor save one, and a one round our assets as well. And then there's the capital reserves. They're supporting commitments in the capital programme. So that review will come forward in the next budget report. Just a couple of words about lobbying. We have continually lobbied on a number of issues to Welsh Government through a number of our networks. We've done that more formally this time round. We've put in a formal response to the consultation. The deadline for that was the 24th of January. So we've commented around the sufficiency of the settlement. There's £223 million across Wales, but that's some way short of the £559 million that councils were setting out that they needed. And that 559 million was ahead of the Chancellor's budget and the impact that the national insurance increase will have on our providers. The council is experiencing similar, councils, not just this councillor, experiencing similar pressures, but there's been quite a disparity in council level settlements this year. The average was 4.3, but the lowest was 2.6 and the highest 5.6. So we've requested a floor at the average of 4.3%. And also, we've pushed hard on the general formula for allocating resources across Welsh councils. We strongly believe it doesn't properly reflect need. We believe the social care formulas have never really kept up or addressed the implementation of the care cap some years ago. And certainly in a number of forums at the council, we've talked about the schools formula and its shortcomings and its dependency on free school meals as a proxy for additional learning needs for which there's no real correlation. So we've put in a fairly firm response. So I guess what we're asking of you this evening is your comments and questions around the overall approach, any specific questions you have around the cost question savings that we've just gone through. And we're always welcome to hear alternative ideas and proposals that you might have. So I'm going to stop sharing at this stage and take any questions.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Tom. I would like to just say, I mean, we are the second lowest funded council in Wales as per head of the population. And this funding formula that you've just referred to that says it seeks to distribute the resource by need. And it gives an idea that's to do with the size of the tax base, the changes in data, population, pupil numbers, and all that stuff. Exactly how does this formula work, though, and how old is it? How long have they been using this formula?
I think it's been, it's been in its current form probably for a couple of decades, hasn't it? There is data in there that hasn't been kept up to date, albeit there, there's a fair amount of data that is up to date in the formula. But certainly, and this is going back some years ago, I know the council, the director of social services at the time the care cap came in, lobbied hard that the formula didn't reflect the demographic pressures and the age proportions in the Vale. And similarly, we've on a number of occasions lobbied around the schools formula that it's not fit for purpose as well. And I think the longer it goes on, the greater is the divergence, because you just build in year-on-year pressures on top of a base that's not really reflective of where the need is.
Yeah, it seems very unfair, doesn't it? And I understand also in the report we've talked about the no-floor mechanism, and the WLGA are going to make a case for this too. Obviously, being the second lowest funded in the country, that would be a positive step for us. But exactly how will that work? And is this something that you don't really think will happen? What's your view?
We're hopeful that it is going to happen. Every 1% of Welsh grant is £2 million for us, so it's really important. We're at 3.3, so if there were a floor at 4.3%, that'd be an extra £2 million. What we have said in our lobbying, I guess this is to give ourselves every chance of being successful of it, that we want a funded floor. So that's around Welsh Government putting more money in the pot and not funding the floor by taking resources from some of those who fared better in the settlement.
Yeah, thank you. And I can see from the references that 2 of our fellow scrutiny committees have asked for that focus still on lobbying to continue, which of course it will. I mean, it goes without saying, doesn't it? And we would also want to see that happen from this committee. Councillor Franks, can I bring you in now, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, can I start by endorsing your comments, Chair, regarding concerns about the formula, how money is allocated to us, and also the failure to have a minimal level of funding. It really does hit us. But I suppose this does indicate that the lack of influence that this authority has with Welsh Government. I suppose the support from some elements of this authority for Vaughan Gethin has come to bite us. But I'll pass over that. I'll just like to say I'd like to agree with many of your comments, Chair. I would like to go line by line through some of these matters. A line can be, if you're not careful, very significant unless we have more information. And also, I think I will be cautious and mention that although I'm not a trustee of a community centre, I am a trustee of an organisation that's based in a community centre. I do have dispensation to speak, but not vote. Now, I would like to have an explanation, please, regarding unplanned spending of reserves. I don't have the exact figure to hand, but I think it's something in the order of £10 million, which is a eye-watering change. And I just wonder, how confident are we that we won't have a similar call on our reserves? So that's a big one. But I would like further explanation regarding the commercial leases. We're looking for an extra £20,000 in the coming year and then 10,000 later. What's that about? And we also have commercialisation of activities in our parks, bringing in £40,000. Now, I haven't seen any explanation how that's going to work, but I'm sure someone can help me. We've got Baby in Mind, £147,000, and then a further £74,000. I'm most concerned to see that education is going to suffer cuts of £500,000, and at the moment, many schools are on their knees, and I'm looking for clarity on that. I'm sure people will be horrified at the thought that there's going to be a reduction of standards in our resorts. That's £50,000. And then a real kicker for many, many people is the reduction in litter bins and litter collection, which will be a cut of £200,000. And then there is parks and open spaces, £270,000. Now, these are huge sums in some respect, and very little clarity over what is happening. So, Chair, I would very much appreciate some more detail, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. And before I bring Matt back in, can I just clarify for everybody that today we are focused on the corporate resources savings, which is why we've had that presentation. I appreciate that we are the lead scrutiny committee, and this is a massive piece of work, but there have been numerous visitations of this particular report with the other scrutiny committees. I don't want us to try and debate for another hour something that another committee has already debated, and we have their recommendations in front of us. I just want to make that clear. We don't have the directors from all of the other directorates with us tonight because they sit on other scrutiny committees, but I don't want anyone to be disappointed if that director's not here, because it is another scrutiny committee that's heard this. So, Matt, if I can bring you back in, and if you can answer what you can of those questions, but appreciate some you may need to take away. Thank you.
Yeah. So so just carrying on from your comments, the questions on parks, Baby in Mind, resorts, litter bins, parks and open spaces, I won't be responding to, and I would suggest, Councillor Franks, is probably easiest for you to approach those directors of those services directly, rather than perhaps going through me. It probably, hopefully, you'll get a quicker response rather than me being required to coordinate that. The unplanned use of reserves in 2024-5 is a real concern for me. We have put considerable amount of money in the budget in the last couple of years in social care. We are working very closely with the Directorate on their forecasting of demand, but certainly in children's in particular, there's been a relatively unprecedented spike in demand in the current year. What I don't want to be doing in budget setting every year is the first thing we do is add in commitments because of overspends in a previous financial year. My concerns are not just on social care, they're on the schools as well, and the extent to which they run down their balances, which were a sort of historical high at the end of the pandemic. They'd forecast to have a collective deficit by the end of 2023-4, but there was they were in balance overall at about £2.5 million at the close of the last financial year. There were quite some significantly high forecasts in the sum of those numbers are coming down, but still not quickly enough. And there's a lot of work that the director and her team are still doing with schools to be able to manage that position. And it is an ongoing concern. So I think that's the sole question I can respond to, Councillor Franks, and probably easiest if you address your other questions to the relevant service directors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. Matt, can I just stick with reserves, because it is an issue that we need to be worried about, clearly. I know that we've predicted or we've estimated over the next couple of years what our reserves will be, falling down to 41.496 million. And I think we're trying to take in account there, aren't we, the knowns and the unknowns, which is quite a scary position because things can change very quickly. We know this from the last few years, don't we? And that dramatic turn of events with that Liz Truss budget. How do we actually work out what is a safe level of reserve? Is there a formula that we're using? I know you said you're going to be reviewing it, and I know we're very prudent and we like to, make sure that we will be okay. But I think that the issues of reserves, as Councillor Frank said, is something that we need to be, we need to be clear on. So, what is our clear approach? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll probably say a couple of more words than I did over the reserve slide earlier on. So we do have to hold general fund balances, and those are held effectively to cover unknown risks. And were our general fund balances to be impacted by pressures in year, the first thing we would have to do with the following year's budget is reinstate them. We've had quite a devolved approach to risk in the past, with there being a number of service reserves, but as those decline, then we will need to have a review of what level our general fund balances are held at, and that's part of the review that we're undertaking at the moment. We do then, as I'd mentioned earlier, hold reserves to cover known risks. So there are reserves for pay pressures and for legal challenge. And also what we put in place in 24/5 was a risk reserve for non-delivery of any savings proposals. So we take a risk approach in terms of the reserves we hold. And then we've also have reserves, again, that I mentioned, where we're seeking to invest in the future and support the council working more efficiently. As we know, there'll be there are gaps in our funding in future years. So those are primarily around digital, physical assets and a general investor save. We also hold reserves then to deliver on council objectives, and this in the order of about 700k set aside for Project Zero initiatives at the moment. So I think we've certainly developed, I believe, a fairly clear narrative of why we hold reserves and the strategy for holding them. Obviously it's unwelcome the unplanned use of reserves, and that will make the review of reserves that we're undertaking at this current time will won't make it. It is making it more challenging. So that we are spending quite a bit of time on that at the moment.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Franks, you've remained on screen during that. So,
may I have a second bite of the cherry?
yes, of course you can. I just didn't know if you wanted to be on screen, but you were.
There you are. I note your comments, Chair, and I won't challenge about the other services at this stage. But I'm still not clear how we got ourselves into a situation where there was £10 million of unplanned spending that had to come from reserves. This is astonishing high level of correction, shall I say? And I would also, I think Matt has faintly touched on the issue of costs relating to the city deal. Now, as I understand it, compensation is going to have to be paid to a company. I think the court case is over. So I wonder if Matt or the leader, perhaps it would be more appropriate for the leader, to make comment on our likely liability. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. I don't remember hearing anything about the city deal in any of that. So that was a very interesting segue there. Matt, would you be able to pass any more comment on the reserves?
The only relevance of the city deal was the capital financing commitments that we'll have in future years as the developments and investments come through. But it wouldn't be appropriate in this forum to comment on the liabilities coming forward from the issue that Councillor Franks just raised.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll, you have your hand up. Would you like to come in with a question? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Matt, for the presentation. We've heard a lot of figures this evening in relation to specific service areas. I'd like to start with the basics, if that's okay. First of all, the draft settlement awards this authority an increase of 3.3%. The latest inflation figures released today stand at 3%. The proposed council tax rise is 6.9%. So there's a significant disparity there between those figures. The reason for that council tax rise, is that solely due to an increase or perceived predicted increase in demand for services over the year?
That is essentially it, isn't it? It's the demand and the growth in additional learning needs in our schools, the impact that has on home to school transport, the pressures we see there, and then the pressures in demand that we're having from growing adult population with more complex needs, which
social care,
which you can forecast, and then the more volatile and really very difficult to forecast pressures that we're having on children's social care. We're just one or two cases of looked after children going into external placements can make a massive impact on the budget. So it is
the cost pressures then essentially, obviously there will be exceptions as well, but there are four main areas where the cost pressures come from then: schools, ALN, social care, and school transport. So the budgets for those areas are going to, if you're to provide the services, a lot of them are statutory services, obviously, to provide them, you are going to need to find money elsewhere within the budget to fund that demand. That's the case.
Yeah. And as you'll see from the chart that I put up, or the table I put up quite late in the presentation, the adult social care budget increase in the order of 10%, schools budget 7.5%. So figures well in excess of those. The general level of settlement at 3%, and the inflation at 3% in the most recent figures.
And that's why I made the point on the last agenda item that I was disappointed with the leader's response to this on productivity and why it's so important. Because obviously, if we can deliver services to a better standard with fewer resources in one service area, that cash can then be redeployed to those areas where there is increased demand and pressure. What does this authority do to measure productivity at present?
I think we've had the productivity question a couple of times at these meetings, but before I answer that, I would go back and say, whilst productivity isn't necessarily mentioned by name in the report, the whole point of the Reshaping and Transformation programme is about doing things differently as a council. There's an element of that within the target operating model stream that's around brilliant basics and being more efficient in the day-to-day activities that everybody does. And those strategies are in place because we know we've got growing demands in social care, and that we are having to move our resources around as a council quite significantly year on year.
But how does the authority measure productivity? Does it have a specific? Does it carry out assessments or specific studies? Does it compare outputs between different service areas, for example?
We've talked in the earlier item this evening about the corporate plan and the directorate plans that sit below it. There are a series of targets and outcomes that the individual directors and heads of service are delivering on and that are measured through that process.
What about working from home? Has that had any impact on outputs?
Excuse me a minute. Can I just come in here, Councillor Carroll, because you are moving way off the actual conversation and the debate, which is to do with the budget. Though I appreciate why you're asking these questions. If we can just stick with the budget report, that would be really, really helpful.
With respect, Chair,
Thank you.
With respect, Chair, when it comes to finding savings and setting budgets, obviously the way resources are allocated and achieving efficiency within those allocations is essentially what budget setting is about. If you can deliver services in a more streamlined, more efficient, more productive manner, then obviously that's going to impact the amount you're having to allocate for those. So I think it's entirely relevant, Chair, because ultimately this isn't an audit committee where we're looking back and looking at what's been spent and the numbers and making sure they're adding up. Here, we're a resources and a policy committee, so our job is to identify problems, i.e. shortfalls in the budget, and seek to find ways of mitigating them. So that's why I'm asking these questions. I think they're perfectly pertinent and relevant.
Thank you. If you'd like to make a recommendation to do something different, then I think that would be very helpful. So if you have a recommendation, please make it.
Well, I will. I'm more than happy to make a recommendation, but at the first instance, the question was on home working. Has any work been done to assess its impacts on productivity and its impacts on budgets?
Thank you. Matt, I don't know whether you can answer that question, but if we can move on to another committee member then, because I think you've had quite a few questions in this one section, but thank you, Councillor Carroll.
There hasn't been any specific work on that. We do obviously have a home working policy as a council, and we do rely on managers and head and senior officers, as we should do, to look at the mix of home working, hybrid working, and presence in the office.
Thank you, Matt. Councillor Johnson, I can see you have your hand up. Would you like to come in with some questions related to the presentation we've just seen and the draft? Sorry, and also the oh dear,
Draft budget.
Budget. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you.
Okay,
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. Of course, at the root of the problem here is a shortfall in funding from Welsh Government, and in turn UK Government. WLJ has noted shortfalls in terms of how much is coming through, and the fact that we spend so much on on-demand services, making it difficult for us to take a view to what's coming through the pipeline. Noting the work from this council and by WLGA to ask for some sort of funding floor for additional funding, which was available for Conwy Council and Gwynedd Council last year. Because of this, I don't know why Chris Franks has come back on the screen.
Chris? Gonna go Palmer.
Well, I don't know why he's there. So we can see the financial difficulties. A number of ideas have come through to us from a number of different departments. We've heard an overview of, I've listened to a number of discussions, and in particular the Scrutiny Committee for Regeneration and Environment last year, which spoke about, or who noted recently, the hopes in relation to car parking and some of the difficulties in terms of community asset transfers with community centres. So I'd also like to note that there are concerns regarding those two things. We don't have any recommendations from the Social Care Committee, and there are some quite substantial savings coming forward from that department in relation to support for young people. So I don't know whether this, or whether some of the savings which will appear over the next financial year. In terms of matters which are quite in short supply this evening, so 10% suggested savings. Could I ask a question in relation to digital services? I know that there was a report recently on exactly where savings will be forthcoming. Are these different to the reduction in headcounts and 5 posts, which also form part of the report this evening? And if they're not coming from there, where are these 5 roles coming from? And as a Welsh speaker, obviously, could we get a little bit more clarification on the savings that the department is intending to make around written translations via the usage of Amazon as opposed to the SLA which we currently have? As this evening is the committee with an overview of the budget. It's disappointing. I know it's difficult to get everybody in the same room in terms of some of the savings, but if we don't have the discussion in this committee, we'll have the same conversation on council floor when it comes to the final vote. But if we could just have the explanation of the matters falling under human resources, I'm happy to accept the explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. And if it's okay, Matt, I'll cover off the questions from Councillor Johnson. In terms of the first around the savings from digital that were subject of that cabinet report recently, they are different from the 5 posts that we've identified in terms of headcount reduction. So there's no double counting there. We've kept them separate, and the reason for keeping them separate is that there's a wider piece of transformation work going on within the digital service. So that's about reconfiguring roles. It's about looking at different functions. It's about putting a structure in place that means that we're able to deliver on the digital strategy. So it's part of a bigger piece of work. In terms of the individual roles, they come from across the directorate. Predominantly they're vacant posts of a variety of different grades and are subject to, in some instances, some internal HR processes. So I'd be happy to share some details with committee members, but would do outside of the public domain if that's okay, because of obviously some people may be impacted by those. In terms of that saving in relation to the use of Amazon translation services, currently we have an agreement where we work with Bilingual Cardiff, which is part of Cardiff Council, who have in the past provided a really good service to us in terms of both written translation and simultaneous translation, and we're continuing to use that service. The pilot that I mentioned, Councillor Johnson, in the earlier presentation, has been run over the last year, predominantly looking at shorter forms of translation content. So it's been looking at social media posts and also press releases. We've made sure throughout that process that we've been doing some quality assurance. We've got a number of Welsh speakers within the communications team in order to make sure that we can check the quality, because that's obviously of critical importance, and it is the most important factor. The pilot has run well. It's shown decent quality, and it is a much more cost-effective use of resources. The proposal in terms of expanding that pilot would see us now using that translation mechanism, but where we're translating content that we've got fluent Welsh speakers who are able to then do that quality assurance within departments. So it's not going to just be an increase in copy that gets sent through Amazon. It would still have that quality assurance. And we want to do that to make sure that when we're starting to translate other types of content that and potentially longer content, that we can be assured that the quality will still be retained. So it's something that we're taking relatively tentative steps. We're in discussions with other local authorities who are using Amazon and also similar machine learning translation software, which colleagues in Cardiff Council do as well, in order to incrementally look at ways that we can be more cost effective in our use of translation services. That's the background to that one.
Okay, diolch yn fawr, Tom. Dwi'n hapus i gael fwy o wybodaeth.
Thank you. Happy to receive more information about both matters outside of this meeting, if possible. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. And yeah, I mean, I also agree with the comments, certainly to do with our contact centre. It's good if we've been able to invest in more digital technology, which will save us money in the long term. But we know how important, as it is the first point of contact an awful lot of our residents have, that service is improved, because we have had issues over the year, and I know that we're looking at it, but we don't want a reduction of resource there. We just want it to get better. So that's something that I also share his concern with. Do we have any other questions, please, on the budget? No? Okay, that's great. I just want to reassure everybody that the comments from Homes and Safer Communities, Learning and Culture, and Environment and Regeneration, all of those comments that we've had will be going forward to Cabinet from us, along with comments that you have made tonight. All is important, and it's important that we share what we get and we are sending it on. If we go to the recommendations, they are, as I've described, that we share our views along with the views that have been referred from the other committees. A composite response will go back and it'll be shared with Cabinet. So if everybody's happy with that position, if I can have a hand, please, to move. Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Hanks. Right then, if we move on to agenda item 7, which is another reference from Cabinet from the 16th of January. This is the draft capital programme proposal for 25-26 to 29-30. So I think we've got Matt again for this one. So if you'd like to take us through your presentation, that'd be great. Thank you.
If we could have the presentation back. So I've just got 2 or 3 slides to introduce this item. I guess the headlines are that there's little in the way of new resource to add to our rolling 5-year capital programme. We did undertake quite a significant review of it last year, similarly constrained with how much resource there was, and we did need to push a couple of schemes back, which obviously then does impact on flexibility in future years. There is good news on the capital programme, though. The amount awarded to council is £7.6 million, which was 620k greater than the sum we received in 2024-5. Nevertheless, it's worth highlighting that we do have a very ambitious 5-year programme. Apologies, there's a slight typo in there, the wrong type of in. There's £82.4 million in for 25-6 at the moment, and just short of £400 million over the 5 years. It is ambitious, and that will take some delivery, especially when you look at the capital outturn over the last 2-3 years. It's primarily funded through specific grant, but there's also significant use of unsupported borrowing, and that in the main is for housing development, and the financing costs of that are effectively met from tenants' rents. We've had a sort of shorter, more concise capital bidding process for this year. They've been shortlisted by the Strategic Insight Board, went through them in some detail in October. And as the provisional capital settlement had been received, there are now some new schemes to be included in the capital programme. Just a couple of slides on the overview of the programme in terms of spend. First, as I said, £82 million in year 1, and then just short of 400 across the 5 years. There are a number of pipeline schemes at the bottom of the slide. They're predominantly in sustainable school communities for learning, and we're just waiting for those outline business cases to be approved, and then we'll promote them typically up into that learning and skills line. So the majority of the spend of the capital programme through learning and skills, environment in terms of the highways, and housing. And then on the funding, as I've said, quite a lot of the funding is through grants and other contributions, some level of funding through reserves, and also a small amount through capital receipts. The unsupported borrowing obviously need to build in the capital financing impact of that is built into the revenue budget. There aren't, in terms of the new schemes being built into the programme, there's not very much for this, for corporate resources in there. There are a number of social care improvements, some street lighting in terms of highways. We've had to put additional resource into the putting right the Penarth Marina landslip. There's a business case in place around fleet parking. There's need to replace windows in the civic buildings. And there's also a dining block bid that has gone into Welsh Government. We're hoping to have grant for that, but it's certainly underwritten by some borrowing and capital financing in the proposals in front of us at the moment. This next slide really applied to both the revenue and the capital papers this evening. So we've had a series of scrutiny meetings looking at both the revenue and capital proposals over the first 3 weeks of February. This is the last in the round of those. The public consultation ran for 4 weeks until last Friday. And colleagues are just pulling that report together for me, which I'll review and build into the final budget papers. There's a slightly different route for the Treasury strategy that is reviewed by governance and audit. And we had a training session on Monday ahead of that review, and that will go on to Cabinet. The Welsh government settlement is expected tomorrow. Tomorrow. The expectation is we'll have all the funding tables and the detail that we require to start putting the final draft budget report together as well. So those go to Cabinet on the 6th of March. And then, sorry, I should have deleted that next bullet point. We were uncertain when we started putting this presentation together when we were actually going to get that settlement. And then, as I say, council on the 10th of March to approve that draft budget. So I'll stop sharing at that point, and happy to take any further questions you may have.
Thank you, Matt. Do we have any questions on this particular report then, on the draft capital programme proposal? Councillor Johnson, please come in.
Diolch, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. The majority of this report is quite clear, as it builds on a number of the previous reports, looking at the future and the plan over the next 5 years. The only real question I have relates to expenditure on housing construction, of new housing, because of course this forms part, I don't know if it's the largest part, but it's a large part of the spending of the plan relates to building new social housing, council houses, and this is a good ambition of the council. I just wanted to try and work out, trying to do a bit of a cross-reference with the housing business plan. But do you know how many houses we're intending to build over the 5 years of this plan? Apologies for turning my head. I've got another screen with the figures. But do you happen to know, Matt?
But not to hand this evening. certainly share them with you after the meeting.
Yeah, for the
I'd really appreciate that, because as I say, the rest is pretty clear in terms of where expenditure is intended to go. If I could just ask one extra question. I don't know whether you'll know the question or the answer to the question, but one of the recent discussions in the Environment and Regeneration Committee was in relation to car parks. And I just wanted, as the Finance Department asked other departments to put applications in for the capital programme or plan, they put applications in for road improvements which belong to car parking or for the multi-floor car park behind the court. I don't know whether you know, whether you can let us know later or tonight. Thank you.
We had quite a significantly long list of schemes that came through at the end of the summer, early autumn, that we asked services to prioritise, and only the priority ones we turned into full business cases. So I'm going to have to go back a couple of months and look through that and share that with you after the meeting, if that's okay as well.
Oh yeah, diolch yn fawr, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Any other questions, please, on the draft capital programme proposals? No? Okay. Thank you, everybody. We'll move then to the recommendations. They were that we review the draft capital programme, which we have done, and we share the views of other scrutiny committees along with ours. We didn't receive any references from other scrutiny committees on this particular item, so there isn't really anything to share. And I understand the questions that Councillor Johnson has asked. Matt, you'll be able to feed back to him. So I think based on that, then really, as far as we're concerned, it's for noting this report. And if everybody's happy with that position, we'll have a hand to move. Thank you, Councillor Goodjohn, and thank you, Councillor Drake. Okay, we'll move on then to agenda item 8. This is items that the chair's decided are urgent. We don't have any. That's part 1. Part 2, this is the bit that would exclude public and press, but we also don't have any more of those. So that just brings me to the end of tonight's meeting. I want to thank you all for participating. I'm sorry if there are certain things that you couldn't ask because we don't have the directors here to answer it, but I am sure that that you'll be able to get those responses offline and after the meeting. Karen, the next meeting, I haven't actually written it down. I should have done, just so that everybody knows.
Yes, Chair. Originally, that it had been changed to the 19th of March from the 12th, but I understand whilst I've been on leave that it's been now changed to the 26th of March. So for members, can they make sure that that's noted in their diary? It has been amended on the calendar of meetings on the council's website, but just for confirmation, is the 26th of March at 6 o'clock.
Yes, that's brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Right then, so good night. I hope you have a nice evening, and we'll see you all soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Good night, everybody.